Hello again, welcome back to this Tobi video tutorial on how to author diagram image descriptions. In part 1, step-by-step instructions showed how to create a new Tobi project from an existing DTBook XML file, and we explored the user interface of the authoring tool. More specifically, we walked through the basic mode of the pop-up editor dedicated to image descriptions. Now, let's put the editor to use. As a continuation to part 1 of this video tutorial, the image descriptions editor is set to the image entitled The Last Judgment by Michelangelo. No descriptions have been authored so far, and as indicated by the notes section at the bottom of the dialog, a long description must be specified. So let's add a long description by clicking on the Edit button. We're presented with a pop-up dialog. I'm just going to type "this is a long description" and I'll press the OK button, and as you can see, the long description has been updated with the text that I have just been inputting. In addition, the notes section now indicates that there are no issues anymore. The summary and simplified language textual descriptions are optional, so let's leave them alone for now. Instead, let's go to the Alternative Images tab and let's add a simplified image. I'm just going to pick a random image from my hard disk, let's say this one, which happens to be the Tobi logo. As you can see, the Notes section has been updated to remind me that it is recommended to specify a tour for the simplified image. I can do that by clicking on the Edit button of the Tool section, and I'm once again presented with a pop-up dialog box. I'll just type in "this is a tour textual description." Press the OK button. Now the tool section has been updated and the notes section indicates that no issues are detected. So for the simplified image, in this demonstration I picked a bitmap in the PNG format. I could have used JPEG or GIF, but Tobi also supports scalable vector graphics. For example, let's set the tactile image to an SVG file. Here I'm going to use the iconic tiger.svg file, which can be downloaded from the internet, and this is how it looks like. So when I resize it, it remains crisp and lossless. There are no pixel artifacts because the image is actually not a bitmap. It's a scalable vector graphics. Once again, the notes section is telling us that it is recommended to specify a tour for the tactile image, but in this case, let's just ignore this message. At this stage, I'm going to save the current descriptions by pressing OK, which will close the dialog, and we're now back in the main Tobi user interface, where the list of images has been updated to let me know that the image now contains a description. Pressing the Undo button, or Ctrl-Z, cancels all of the edits that I have just made. Conversely, pressing the Redo button, Ctrl-Y, restores all of the edits, and this includes the textual descriptions but also the alternative images. Now let's go back to the Edit dialog. Just need to resize it to fit the screen capture dialog. OK. And let's go back to text descriptions, long description, and let's give a try to the audio recording dialog. Clicking on the audio icon takes me straight to the advanced mode of the editor. By the way, I can go back to the basic mode of the editor by clicking on the upper right button entitled Switch to Basic Editor. So if we do that, we'll just get back straight to where we were. And once again, if I click on the audio icon, I get straight to the tab entitled Audio, which allows me to add or edit an audio narration for the text. The text being, in this case, "this is a long description." So this is what we're going to record. So when I click on the Add/Edit button, a pop-up dialog appears, and this is a dedicated waveform editor which includes the recording feature, the red circular button, or Ctrl-R, And when I press that button, the system is ready and I can just talk through the microphone. So let's try that now. This is a long description. Okay, as you can see, this is the usual waveform editor that is found in the main Tobi user interface. From there I can remove silences. Let's do that with the trailing silence as well. And I can now just save the edits, and we're back to the main dedicated editor for image descriptions, and from there I can play, pause to preview the audio that I have just been recorded. I'm not sure you can hear that through the microphone, but anyway, it just played the recording that I have just made. So I'm just going to save that now by pressing on the apply button, which will close the dialog and reopen it instantly. Just need to resize it to the capture screen, and we're ready for the next step. Because I am in the advanced mode of the editor, I have access to expert features. I can manipulate the diagram data model in greater detail, and I can see what happens behind the scenes. For example, the long description is actually a XML element called d-column longdesk, and it has a unique identifier, in this case d_longdesk_1. Now that may be irrelevant to the basic users, but to expert users this means that you can have greater control of what ends up in the XML file should you use the export feature in the upper right corner of the dialog, or should you export to DAISY3, as we will see in a minute or two. This additional data can be edited via the Attributes tab. Each list item is a name-value pair, which can be edited by double-clicking on the list item itself or by using the Edit button. But I can also add brand new attributes by clicking on the Add button and by picking an attribute name from the list, let's say for example a role, and from there I can just enter text, let's say just this dummy role, and now the attribute shows up in the list. So I'm allowed to do this for each individual description as shown in the list on the left hand side. Here we have a long description, simplified image, and a tactile. All these descriptions have common metadata which can be edited via the Metadata tab. As you can see, the list is currently empty, but I can use the Add button and I can pick a property from the proposed list, let's say a date, and here I can enter a date, let's say 2012-06-10. Just press the OK button now, and as you can see there are no issues detected. Now in this particular case, if I were to enter a date that is not in a valid format, let's say for example if I were to add some text in front of the numerals, as you can see in the notes section the date appears to be invalid. So let's restore the correct date, and now I'm going to press OK to close the dialog and go back to the main Tobi user interface, save the project, and finally let's try and export our project. Control E, here I'm going through the menu. I'm going to pick 22 kilohertz. I will not encode to MP3 to save time, and I will merge the image descriptions by ticking the corresponding box. By doing this, I am telling Tobi to export the textual image descriptions, such as the long description, the summary, and the simplified language, inside the DTBook markup as producer nodes. So say you have an image group with an image and an existing caption, Tobi will add producer nodes for each of the three textual descriptions I just mentioned. Tobi will also add a producer node that contains a link that points to the dedicated diagram XML markup file. We're going to have a look at how this looks in the file browser in a minute. So let's press OK. Let's pick an output folder, here the Tobi directory. OK, process is finished, and I am now presented with the file browser, which shows the usual smile files for the book, the dtboot.xml file, some CSS styles here, the images that are contained in the book, the NCX navigation, the package.opf, which is the usual entry point for the digital talking book. If you were to use, let's say, Amis or any other DAISY book player, you would pick the OPF file for playback. A resource file, an MP3 file that's also for the resources, and a separate folder that is named after the image for which we have provided descriptions. So if I were to enter that folder, I can see that there is a dedicated XML file here which contains the diagram content model expressed in an XML form. There's a recording which happens to be the recording we made earlier on for the long description. There's a scalable vector graphics file, as well as a bitmap in the PNG format here. So if I go back to the top folder and open the dtbook file very quickly, because we're going to show reload very quickly because this is code, so I don't want to spend much time on it. But if you look at the image group that contains the Great Painter's Last Judgment.jpg file, we have a prod node that points, prod node being the producer node, that points to the diagram XML here. So this in a DAISY player would be a link that you could link. And we also have a producer node for the long description. And because we didn't specify a summary or a simplified language, there are no producer nodes for these particular textual descriptions. One thing to mention about the long description is that because we recorded audio for it, the human narration is synchronized with the text. So this is why we have a smile ref here. So once again, if we were to play that DT book with the DAISY player, there would be audio narration associated to that producer node. As for the diagram XML itself, this is what it looks like. Again, very briefly, let's have a look at the head, where we see the metadata that we entered earlier on, the DC column date with the current date, and if we scroll down inside the body, that's where we find the long description with the textual information. We also have the simplified image pointing to the PNG image that we specified. We have a tactile image pointing to the scalable vector graphics that we specified. Note that only the simplified image has a two textual descriptions as per our edits. Also note that the long description points to an audio file in the WAV format because we didn't tick the MP3 encode box, and that the Tobi column audio is an attribute that is not part of the diagram specification. This is why it is in the Tobi namespace. So for the non-technical amongst you, I'm sorry for having shown you code, so let me close that window and let's see what the DAISY book looks like in a DAISY player. So first of all, this is Amis. So this is showing the picture, the producer node that contains the link, the long description text, and the original caption that was supplied with the image. Now let's switch to Dolphin Easy Reader, just because it shows the link in a slightly different style. Here it really looks like a link, and if we were to click on that link, this would point to the XML file which contains the diagram content model. So because Dolphin Easy Reader and the other DAISY reading systems do not currently support the diagram content model, this wouldn't do anything interesting. And this is why Tobi also exports the textual descriptions, long descriptions, summary and simplified language inside the DT book itself, so that regular existing DAISY players can handle part of the diagram content model without having to understand the full diagram XML format. So this concludes this video tutorial. Don't hesitate to contact us and use the forums for any questions that you have. Thank you very much. Goodbye.